Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Kishore from Tested.
Now, we have been doing food videos for a while, and one of the first ones we did was immersion circulating. Sous vide. And Will and I used to sous vide all the time. It was great. We visited Modernist Cuisine, where they really introduced us to the concept, and even ChefSteps. And now we are kind of a couple years into consumer sous videing.
We're almost at peak sous vide.
Peak sous vide. There are many devices. People have kickstarted sous vide devices. I've had like 3 of them personally. I thought it'd be a good chance to talk about our experiences with sous vide and what new products are out there and what we're currently using.
Actually, why don't we start by cooking something with it? Why don't you drop those eggs in?
Ah, yes. Perfect ramen eggs, a classic ChefSteps recipe. I'm just gonna drop this in here. We have our water already preheated to 194 degrees Fahrenheit. And in about, how long?
About 8 minutes.
8 minutes, start that timer. We will have some perfect ramen eggs. So the basic concept of immersion circulating in sous vide.
It's basically a fan that circulates the water up into a heating element, heats the water up, shoots it out. It has a really precise temperature sensor in there so that when it gets to a certain temperature, it stops and holds it there.
Hold that temperature, and it's not like an oven. Here we have, it's underwater, it's a water bath. So the food typically is vacuum sealed like this, or in the case of eggs, they're already just in their eggshells. And you can keep it for long periods of time. Like we've made ribs, steaks, vegetables, fish with sous vide.
People make the mistake that they feel like they can leave it in there forever at that temperature. That's not quite right. I've done that with salmon where I left it cooking in a sous vide bath for about 3 or 4 hours and it came out as salmon mush. But you can definitely hold it at that temperature a lot longer than you would under normal cooking conditions.
And because you can control that temperature and hold it there, you can play with recipes. You can have something cook to a temperature to slowly break down your proteins and then keep it at a certain time. So it's 1, it's fully cooked, and 2, then you have the consistency of the meat that you want it to be.
I think that's the key word, consistency. This is using science to make sure that what you cook comes out the same way every single time.
Now, since this past couple of years, I've used the Sansaire, for example, one of the first kickstarted.
It's a giant.
A pretty big one. And then last year, I started using the Anova, which I've really liked. Has a dial in the front, has a screen on the top. That's
clear temperature readout.
But you've been using the Joule.
I've been using the Joule, and I have an Anova as well. The Joule has quickly become my favorite sous vide device. And really simply put, it's not for anything else except for its form factor. This is the one sous vide machine that just fits in my drawer in the kitchen. And you can't beat that. Because when it comes to it, I don't want the process to use my sous vide to be about, I gotta dig it out from storage, put it in the pot, and get it working. The Joule is basically just pull it out of the drawer, stick it in the pot, get going.
Yeah, my personal sous vide setup at home, I have my Anova, plus I have a bin that I have filled with water, and I have ping pong balls on top. With something like the Joule, we're using a pot, and their first model has a magnetic base, and so you can really don't even need to clamp it. You can just stick it into your pot of water, and you don't have to heat up a ton. Now, because it's small, do you find that the heating element heats up your food fast enough?
As long as I'm using something relatively small, like a pot about this size is about the maximum size I've used the Joule for, it can handle that pretty well. So if I'm thinking about this in the context of my kitchen, just the cookware I already have in there, it's plenty powerful. If I'm trying to do something much bigger than that, though, I think it starts to hit limitations on how much water it can heat up and keep there.
Right. Last year when we did the ribs, I made this big box. I put water in, had many racks of ribs. I wouldn't want to use that with one single Anova, but you can chain these if you want to have multiple ones. I've heard some horror stories of people trying to heat up their kiddie swimming pools with sous vide immersion circulators. That's a terrible idea. But with this amount of water, with a pot full of water, you can still make something like a steak. So this is a steak we've been cooking all today. Where did you find the recipe for this steak?
So I use the Joule app for this, and I just use their basic sous vide steak, which is essentially I set it for a medium rare temperature of 129 degrees and let it be at 129 degrees based on the thickness for about 45 minutes. And it has that typical come out of the sous vide look. It's a little bit gray and not the most appetizing strip steak you've ever seen in your life.
But if I took a bite out of this, it would still be totally okay.
It would be, but I think there's some finishing we need to do on this steak.
Absolutely. So we're gonna go put on some salt on here, and then use a device that we like using, which is the Searzall. This attachment on a blowtorch.
Absolutely, it's a blowtorch with like an end that's going to spread out the heat.
Right, wide surface area for this heat, and we're just going to finish this real quick. Now, can you talk a little bit about the recipe system on the Joule?
So inside the app, it's basically everything is done through videos. There's all this, all of these recipes are you actually watch it from step 1 to step 6, watching video preparation of it, and it's this beautifully well shot close-up views of what you need to do, how long you need to do it. It's the easiest set of recipes I've ever followed in my life, and partially because when I'm in the kitchen, using that second screen as a visual guide is much more intuitive for me than using the printed on a note card style recipes that have been around forever.
Or even a phone and scrolling through a tablet and looking through recipes. Now, when I typically look up recipes for sous vide, I find a web page, I look at a bunch of different, and I write down temperature and time. How useful is it to have recipes, and is it something you go back to?
I mean, everything is integrated in this app. So it's basically, I search for the recipe, it comes up with if you want to start this, just hit this button, and it'll set it at the right temperature right away. It's great when you're first starting out sous videing to have everything integrated right into that app. What I found after I sous vide for a long period of time, I didn't need that functionality. I knew what temperature I needed to set things at. I just needed to punch in the temperature and just hit go.
All right, well, I'm gonna continue searing this steak. How much longer do we have on those eggs?
We have another 2 minutes to go.
Oh my God.
On the perfect ramen egg.
Gonna get this done and have steak and eggs on camera cooked within the course of this video. Okay, 8 minutes later, what do we got?
We have a perfect egg ready to be cut. It's going to have a slightly runny center.
Yes.
And very nicely set whites on the outside, just like you'd like in a ramen.
I did a poor job of peeling it, but let me show you over here. If you can see the yolk, which is an important part, that yolk is just so that right in between, like you said, runny and cooked. Kishore, I hate hard-boiled eggs. I hate hard-boiled eggs, but I love me a good ramen egg. Should we do a taste test?
Yeah, we need some salt though.
Oh, okay. Well, I got plenty of salt here. There you go. Okay. There we go.
Cheers.
Cheers. There we go. Look.
That is so good. You can see the runniness in the center of this yolk right here. But it's perfectly warm. The outside is just setting. It's so much creamier than what you would get from an egg normally. And this is the only way you can really get this consistency on an egg, because we had to hold it at a really precise temperature for a set amount of time.
All right, on to the steak.
That was appetizer. Let's go to the main course.
And there you go. Look on the inside. What you're going to get is basically a perfectly medium rare steak through the middle. Now, you could have done this, of course, in a cast iron. You could have done this in the oven. But you have a very thin layer of crust on top because we seared it.
What you can't get through any other mechanism is this even cooking throughout the middle of the steak. That's really what the sous vide is about, is you're not getting this gradient of heat across it where it's a little bit more done at the top and the bottom, and the middle is medium rare. It's perfectly even throughout.
Now, with the Joule, which ChefSteps make, and they have all the recipes, you don't have a dial. You have to connect it with your phone and run it over a local Wi-Fi network.
You can either use Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but yes, you have to use your phone to connect this. And so for some advanced users that are just already know the temperatures they want to set, I've heard some complaints because they just want to hit the button. They don't want to have to get out their phone in order to make it work. But to me, that's a small price to pay for the smaller form factor.
Right.
To have it sit directly in my kitchen drawer.
And it's not living out on your kitchen countertop, because this is really for someone who maybe sous vides once a week, a couple times a month, but isn't sous viding all of their meals. If you're going to do that, maybe you don't necessarily want to use the ChefSteps Joule if you're going to be making, a dozen steaks a night.
All right, you can't cut steak and not let us eat it.
Piece for you, piece for me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That is good. Beyond the fact that it's well seasoned, which is, I think, the number one mistake people make when it comes to steaks, got that little bit of crust on the outside, melt in your mouth, medium rare feel on the inside. Throughout, it's so consistent.
Well, thank you, Kishore, for bringing the steak and the eggs. The ChefSteps Joule, which you've been testing for a while, it lives in your drawer. That's how you can vouch for it. This is, I believe, $180 for the new version, but I think they have a sale going on right now. If you check the link below for $150. We've hit Pete Sous Vide. There's so many of these machines out there. The point I want to get across is that it really isn't difficult to get into sous vide. It may look fancy. You can have all these accessories, but if you just get one of these immersion circulators, you can use your own pot. You don't even need to vacuum seal your meats. You can use Ziploc bags. There are plenty of recipes online on the app, and I'd say go try it, because you can make some really great egg, steak, vegetables, meats, and the benefits pay off immediately. Thank you, Kishore. We're going to finish this steak, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.